Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening, I'm David Kramer here with your Alaska weather. As always, please visit our website at weather.gov/Alaska. You can get any updates to our forecast or check out any watches, warnings, or advisories that we have out for the state. You can also call our weather info line at 1-800-472-0391. Getting updates to the forecast through that means as well. And you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or on YouTube. Starting off, we'll take a quick look at our satellite imagery. Way out west here, we'll have a fast-moving low that is tracking east-southeast here. That's bringing a lot of rain to areas of the western and central Aleutian Islands. As we take a look now out over the eastern areas, we have our bigger low headed up from the North Pacific, headed towards Kodiak Island now, and kind of settling in there. And as we look out in some of the future slides, we'll see that low really starting to slow down over that area. Now, sticking in the same area, we can see the front associated with this low pushing up further north into the north part of the Gulf, bringing in a lot of cloud cover and rain to areas all along the North Gulf Coast. And one more time, we'll look way up to the north. We have another upper level low up here that's bringing in some cloud cover and some areas of rain and even some snow up along the Arctic coastline. So as we drop down now to our weather for the remainder of the day, we do have some snow in the western and central areas along the Arctic coastline, mixed in with some fog up there, a lot of colder air up there. But as we push off a little bit further to the east, it is going to start to switch back over to rain. That will also be mixed with fog. And then as we drop down into the central part of the interior, we are having some more isolated rain showers out there and in the YK Delta area as well, with some fog along the very far western coastline from Point Hope down towards Gamble area. But our biggest low pressure system moving up from the south, you can see the front there, bringing in rain to Kodiak Island along the North Gulf Coast out through the Yakutat area. But weak high pressure keeping out some of the rain from the Panhandle area. Some lighter areas, especially in the northern locations, still possible. And then as we look out further to the west out over the Bering Sea, we can see our quick moving low with bringing in some rain to the western and central Aleutian Islands. And some of the northerly flow here bringing in some showers, especially on the Bering side of the Alaska Peninsula. As we move into the nighttime, we are going to see some continued rain out over the western and central Aleutian Islands as we watch that low quickly move off to the south and east. And you can start to see here our northerly flow really starting to pick up out over the Bering Sea, especially as this high pressure builds in from the west. And we're going to see a lot of showers throughout the Bering side of the Aleutian Islands here now for the tonight forecast for the eastern Aleutian Islands and the Alaska Peninsula. Up along the west coast from the St. Lawrence Island area up through the Arctic coastline, we are going to see some fog up there. And as we get from Point Hope further to the north and north of the Brooks Range, we are going to see a lot of snow up there too. And you can start to see with this high pressure here in between this low, we are going to see that northerly flow coming down, bringing in colder air to the Arctic coastline. Much of the interior should be void of precipitation overnight, but we do have some areas far out to the south and east that are going to see some isolated areas of rain showers, but the main rain is going to come from our low that's slowing down as it gets closer to Kodiak Island. With that front pushing in, going to bring rain from the Alaska Peninsula through the Bristol Bay area, all through south central Alaska and out towards Yakutat. But the Panhandle area should stay pretty clear from rain overnight tonight, but there will be some fog developing, especially in the southern locations. As we move into Tuesday, we're seeing our slow-moving low now making it over the Kodiak Island area, front pushing well into southern Alaska, bringing rain again from the Alaska Peninsula area through Bristol Bay, Alaska Range, south central areas, southern parts of the interior now, with some showers out ahead of that pushing into much of the eastern interior as well. And the front still bringing in rain to Yakutat area, but staying just away from the Panhandle area on Tuesday. Up along the Arctic coastline, including the Brooks Range now, we are going to see some snow with some fog up there as well, remaining through Tuesday with that northerly flow continuing through that area as this high pressure just sits there off to the northwest. We're also going to have fog continue down the west coast of the state from the Point Hope area down towards the Gamble area once again. And with our high pressure way out west, we're seeing a lot of northerly flow that is going to bring in some showers along the Aleutian Islands from the central Aleutians out towards the Alaska Peninsula area on Tuesday. As we move into Wednesday, that high pressure now pushed a little bit further to the south, bringing in some areas of fog over the western Aleutian Islands. But that northerly flow all throughout the central Aleutians out through the Alaska Peninsula, bringing a lot of shower activity, once again, especially on the Bering side of those islands. And then as we get out towards the Pribilof Island, seeing some rain out there as well. Up along the west coast of the state, we're going to see some rain along the St. Lawrence Island area, up through the Bering Strait, but as we get out over the western and central parts of the North Slope, we are going to see that still being cold enough on Wednesday for snow to happen. As we move out further to the east, starting to warm up a little bit out there, seeing a mixture of rain and snow on Wednesday. Through much of the interior, you're going to see some isolated showers continuing throughout the day on Wednesday. And our main low starting to diminish now, but hanging out over the Kodiak Island area, bringing continued southerly flow all along the North Gulf Coast. Going to see rain continued all through those areas, with some making it through into the south central area, and rain starting to fill in now for the Panhandle area. Taking a look at temperatures now, we are going to see temperatures, or this was this afternoon at 3 p.m. We saw temperatures in the mid-50s in the northern parts of the Panhandle, but up to as high as the mid-60s as we drop down into the southern Panhandle, with Ketchikan there at 66 degrees, Yakutat 58 degrees this afternoon. Along the North Gulf Coast, seeing temperatures in the mid-50s, but as we get to more interior locations, we are seeing temperatures into the 60s, with Talkeetna up to 65 degrees this afternoon, Kodiak 52 degrees. Moving into the interior part of the state, western parts of the interior, seeing temperatures in the 50s, but as we get off further to the east, we're seeing temperatures in the 60s there, with Fairbanks being the warmest in the interior, 64 degrees. As we move up through the pass, temperatures right about freezing there, and as we then drop down to the Arctic coastline, we're seeing temperatures primarily in the mid to upper 30s, with some areas like AKwx being a little bit warmer there, 45 degrees this afternoon. Down in the Kotzebue Sound area, we're seeing temperatures primarily in the mid to upper 40s, with 46 degrees for Kotzebue and Shishmaref, and Kivalina as well. Gamble 44 degrees, and then down in the Norton Sound area, lower 50s, warming up a little bit as we get down into the YK Delta area. Along the coastline, mid 50s there, but as we push to more interior locations, mid 60s. Antioch there at 64 degrees this afternoon. As we move down to the Bristol Bay area, primarily in the mid to upper 50s, with a few places like King Salmon and Dillingham getting into the 60s this afternoon. King Salmon there at 64, Dillingham 61 degrees. Alaska Peninsula into the lower to mid 50s there, with Cold Bay and Sandpoint both at 54 degrees. And then in the Aleutian Islands, all locations are showing right around 52 degrees. And St. Paul a little bit colder, 48 degrees this afternoon. Taking a look at lows for tonight, only dropping down a little bit over the Bering and Aleutians, down to 45 degrees for St. Paul, and then in the upper 40s for many locations in the Aleutian Islands. A little bit warmer as we get to the Alaska Peninsula, right around 50 degrees there, with upper 40s for the Bristol Bay area. And then as we move into the YK Delta area, colder as we get further to the north. We are seeing places around Hooper Bay area dropping down to 41 degrees, but mid-40s for much of the rest of the YK Delta area, especially the Kuskokwim part of that Delta area. For the Seward Peninsula, we are seeing temperatures primarily right around 40 degrees, with Nome a little bit colder there, 37 degrees for a low tonight, Gamble down to 44. Up along the Arctic coastline, dropping down to just above freezing for most places. Dead Horse looks to be a little bit colder, dropping down to 31 degrees. And as we move down into the interior part of the state, western interior dropping down to just above freezing. But as we get out towards the central and eastern parts of the interior, dropping down into the lower to mid 40s. Down into the south central locations, we are seeing temperatures in the more interior locations dropping down into the mid to upper 40s, but along the coastline staying right at or just above 50 degrees, with Kodiak dropping down to 53 degrees. In the Panhandle area, upper 40s in the northern locations. As we get to more southern locations, we are seeing temperatures only drop down to the mid to lower 50s. For highs for tomorrow, we're seeing temperatures getting up into the 60s all throughout the Panhandle area, warmest as we get further to the south. Yakutat, however, only getting up to around 61 degrees. Mid to upper 50s for the most part in the south central, with some locations getting up to right around 60 degrees. And then in pretty much all of the interior getting into the mid 50s there. with some locations like Northway getting a little bit higher, just right around 60 degrees. Then through the Brooks Range and along the Arctic coastline, mid-30s for the most part. Again, through the pass a little bit colder, only getting up to 26 degrees for a high tomorrow through the pass. As we go down along the west coast of the state, Kotzebue Sound area, mid to upper 40s. So again, to the Norton Sound area, right around 50 degrees. Mid-50s for the YK Delta area, as well as mid to upper 50s for the Bristol Bay area, and then mid-50s for the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutian Islands, with St. Paul getting up to right around 51 degrees for a high tomorrow. Changing gears to some aviation weather. Out over the Bering Sea and Aleutian Islands, pretty much widespread MVFR conditions with some IFR conditions out by the central and western Aleutian Islands. Up along the Arctic coastline with that fog we're going to see up there, some primarily MVFR conditions with some areas of IFR as well. Then out over the Gulf with that system coming up, we can see a lot of MVFR and IFR conditions pushing up with that front. Then in the afternoon tomorrow, we are going to see lingering MVFR conditions pushing a little bit further inland now as that front continues to push in as well. And then that's going to extend out over much of the eastern Gulf, but not making it too far into the Panhandle area. Along the Arctic coastline, widespread MVFR conditions are expected, and over much of the Bering Sea and Aleutian Islands, MVFR conditions expected there as well in the afternoon. For our passes, starting off with AKwx Pass, we are going to start off IFR, improve to marginal conditions. That is going to be true for Adigan Pass as well. Lake Clark and Merrill should both remain marginal throughout the day tomorrow. Rainy Pass will start off VFR, but as that front approach is going to drop down to MVFR, and that is going to be true of Windy as well and Isabel Pass. Mentasta, however, should stay VFR throughout the day. Tenita Pass going to start off VFR, drop down to marginal later in the day. Portage will stay largely MVFR, but the best conditions are going to be on the west side, where we will see some IFR conditions on the east entrance there. Chilkoot and White will both start off in VFR and then improve to VFR as we move later in the day. Now we can really see here while we're seeing some of the snow as we look up to the north with our surface freezing line now pushing into much of the Arctic coastline in that colder air with those lower freezing levels pushing down from that northerly direction with, again, that high bringing in much more of that cold northerly flow. But as we look down over the Panhandle area, we're still seeing some pretty high freezing levels there with some of that warm air coming in and over in that direction. And then as we have way out to the west, some higher freezing levels there as well. So you look at our icing for tomorrow, starting off here in the Alaska Peninsula area, between 5,000 and 8,000 feet expected there. And this is primarily in as that front moves in. So some of these areas are going to start off a little bit further to the south, but push more inland as we move throughout the day tomorrow. In the northern parts, while looking in the south central area, between 8,000 and 12,000 feet there. As we move closer towards the Panhandle area, above 9,000 feet there. And along the Arctic coastline, we're going to see with those lower freezing levels, lower icing levels as well, between 1,000 and 4,000 feet expected over much of the Arctic coastline. So look at our jet for tomorrow. We do have the main core of the jet here pushing right up through much of the central part of the state. It's driving that front further to the north, 100 knots out of a southerly direction, and exiting out in a westerly direction at 105 knots. Another weaker branch of the jet coming in over northwest Alaska out of northwest direction, 60 knots there. And the other part of the jet is going to ride to the south of the Aleutians, getting as high as 125 knots, with another jet streak here pushing out of a northerly direction, 60 knots right by the western Aleutian Islands. Dropping us down to 9,000 feet, we do have primarily northerly flow out over the Bering, getting stronger as we get further to the east, up to as high as 45 knots moving out over the Alaska Peninsula. Then circulating around our low, we have some of our strongest winds, and on the eastern side, 60 knots out of a southeasterly direction, moving in over Prince William Sound, but then dropping down pretty quick to around 30 over the eastern part of the state. Out over the Panhandle area, southerly flow around 35 knots there. Down to 3,000 feet, a similar flow pattern. We have the southeast flow coming in over the Panhandle, 25 knots there, but picking up to as high as 55 knots, circulating around our low pressure, but dropping down as it moves over land, 25 knots there. Then northerly flow once again out over the Bering Sea, weaker out west, getting stronger as we get closer to the low, as high as 35 knots pushing over the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutian Islands. So it should be no surprise as we look at our turbulence Winds circulating around that low being the strongest are bringing us some areas of turbulence below 4,000 feet out over the Kuskokwim Delta area, below 4,000 out over much of the Alaska Peninsula as well. And as we look out from Kodiak Island, Barren Islands area, out along the North Gulf Coast, below 5,000 feet expected through tomorrow as that low pressure system is moving into the area. We'll be back shortly with the marine forecast.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm Dave Snider, and joining me again is Cindy Preller. She's the Tsunami Program Manager for Alaska Region's National Weather Service. Thanks again for joining us, Cindy.
Thanks for having me back, Dave.
Sure thing. And I love saying Tsunami Program Manager for Alaska's National Weather Service because that's not weather. Why is the Tsunami Program part of the National Weather Service?
Well, it's because the Weather Service absolutely rocks at warning people for every kind of, devastating natural hazard.
Mm-hmm. The mission of the Weather Service is to protect life and property. And so how does the Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, Alaska, which is a very unique office, again, within the Weather Service, it's not weather, how do those folks help us protect life and property?
The National Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer is a national warning center, and we analyze seismic traces 24/7 all around the world. So when there's an earthquake anywhere on the planet, we see it and analyze it within minutes.
Within minutes, and
Within
there's
minutes.
actually a goal to have it under, was it 5 minutes?
If there is a tsunami warning to be issued for continental America, yeah, we must get that out, or shoot to get that out in 5 minutes.
Okay. Now that's not something I have ever learned to do, so I know it would be a struggle for me to do that under probably hours. But it is fascinating to watch, and the office is open on a regular basis for tours, right?
Absolutely. Come by Friday.
Okay.
Yep, every Friday at 1, 2, and 3 p.m. and they're open public free tours. And it's the most interesting place on the planet. You really should check it out.
Okay, and the office team is made up of people that are earth scientists, not meteorologists or atmospheric scientists. Talk about some of the types of people that work there.
Right, we are out of place in our National Weather Service, but we are geologists, geophysicists, oceanographers. We even have an astrophysicist on board, computer software architects, electronic technicians that are brilliant and innovative. Our software is all written in-house. Our instrumentation is designed in-house. So it's a really, really unique place, and it's just a couple handfuls of people that work there. So
sure.
Yeah.
One of my favorite ways to get a tsunami alert message is on Twitter.
Right.
And I can follow the Twitter address, and we'll put that up on the screen for you there. But it's usually a very quick message that tells you initially what the magnitude of an earthquake could be and about where its epicenter was. What are some of the other ways that you can get that alert message?
Well, Twitter's my favorite too.
Yeah.
And you don't even need a Twitter account to receive it. So
That's
just comes in like an SMS message. But you can also receive it via email, weather radio, of course, the crawler on your television screen, on the internet, Google Alerts, marine radio if you're out in harbors and boats. Actually, marine radio is probably...
Yeah, it is a good one.
That's our partnership with the Coast Guard. We're really grateful for that, absolutely. But there's a variety of ways in dissemination.
Okay.
And locally, excuse me, I'm sorry, but locally in the communities, the sirens will go off as well.
Right. So lots of different ways to get that very important message very quickly when that matters to you. One of the ways that the Warning Center practices with communities is a test on a yearly basis, right?
Right.
How does that work?
Thanks for bringing that up. It's a controversial issue, but it's super important to help us warn better and really serve Alaskans. So the week of March 27th, the commemoration of the 1964 event, for that week we have a Tsunami Preparedness Week every year. We like communities to get out and do drills and practice and do everything we can to raise awareness. And part of that is a live code test where we actually issue the warning message live and we activate the emergency alert system, which means sirens go off, the TV crawler happens, and it's a test.
We're doing everything that would normally happen without the real threat of the tsunami, just to practice as much as possible.
Right, and this is a major partnership with the State of Alaska, Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, the Emergency Operations Center, and the Alaska Broadcasters Association. Without the media, we wouldn't be able to do this. So the three groups really work tightly together to do our best to warn, educate the public that this is happening, so they don't wonder and get scared about it. It has been remarkable what we've learned. I mean, it pretty much breaks somewhere every time, but then we fix it, and it gets better. So a quick example is just a few years ago, we used to, when we issued a message, it would activate the entire state. Right? I mean, Kotzebue, Nome, Bethel, everybody would be in tsunami warning. And so now we can regionalize it to where the actual event is taking place. That's pretty huge.
Right. So identifying points of failure and also points of success, and making sure we continue down that successful path so that folks are warned as quickly and accurately as possible.
Absolutely. And you know, to get our communities involved to prep themselves, prep their businesses, prep their tourism, prep their schools, you know, just make this an annual thing they need to be doing.
Right. So as citizens wanting to be prepared, we should be prepared to learn more about that test that's happening usually toward the end of March every year.
Right, and you should be happy that it's happening.
Right.
Instead of upset. Definitely be happy that it's happening.
Right. Just as we test tornado sirens in tornado country, we also have to test the tsunami program as well.
Right, because there isn't enough time. You know, for a local tsunami, the wave will arrive in less than 2 minutes. So it's super important that people know what to do.
Very good. Well, Cindy, thank you so much for helping us know more about the Tsunami Ready program and the test. And the Tsunami Warning Center is a very unique and very important job in the National Weather Service that is just fascinating to me every time I visit the office. So,
it's the only one for the continent. You really should come check it out.
It's an international effort.
Yes.
Wonderful stuff. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Dave.
And thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm Dave Snider. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back. We'll start off here with a quick look at the ice edge. And with these very warm sea surface temperatures that we have been seeing, the ice edge is still melting at this time and well north of any part of the Arctic coastline, with the closest areas being there north of Kaktovik area in the Beaufort Sea. But as we look out west here, not a lot of activity for the ice, still way up to the north there in the Arctic Ocean. Now, we do have an exciting change coming for the marine charts. As we look at those, you are going to see some differences here as we're trying out some new things to try to provide a little bit more data in our marine forecast. And we'll spend a minute here to explain some of this. So you'll notice many of the similar things with the winds here and the red arrows, and we have our wind speeds and knots there, and the white numbers, and the blue is the sea heights. But we also have a new background image here. You can see the lighter arrows, those black arrows there, are winds for the time frame, and the longer they are, the stronger they are. But the actual colored image behind there is sea heights. So you can really start to see, and what we're really hoping with this is that it'll show areas of fetch, especially in coastal flooding prone areas, so we can really get some extra data on that and provide more spot forecasts for areas as you get closer to the coastline, for instance, and the gradients of those seas and winds as we get to more particular areas for mariners, that they can really isolate out areas and not just the larger average areas that we have in the numbers here. So the big difference between these two is the numbers that we have on the map and the arrows that we have drawn there are averages for the day. So in this case, all averages for Tuesday. Whereas this image, both the winds and the seas, are a single snapshot of time at around 0Z, which local is around 4 p.m. for Alaska. So again, these are average numbers and arrows here, and the background images are single snapshots. So sometimes there will be small variations in the directions of the arrows that we have that are the averages and the ones that are in the background image. Anyway, we will continue with the marine forecast. Starting off here in the southeastern part of the state, southeast flow on Tuesday, 20 knots, picking up to as high as 35 knots with some stronger gusts as we get up into the northern parts of the Gulf, with the inside waters 10 to 15 knots. Taking us into Wednesday, south to southeasterly flow, 20 to 30 knots, strongest further to the north, and southwest flow out over much of the Gulf, 15 to 20 knots there, with seas 9 to 11 feet, strongest as we get further to the north, and in the very north part of the Gulf there, 13 feet. Tuesday for the south central locations, a northerly flow through the Cook Inlet area, 25 to 40 knots, strongest as we get out to the western part of the Barren Islands. And you can really see that brighter image behind here showing a lot of the stronger seas, and we can see that they're 14 to 18 feet extending out to the east there. And for winds, 30 to 40 knots, strongest closer towards Prince William Sound area in the northern part of the Gulf there, but in Prince William Sound, 30 knots on Tuesday. For Wednesday, southeast flow 20 to 25 knots out over much of the Gulf and Prince William Sound, and then still northeasterly flow, Cook Inlet area 20 to 25 knots. Down around the Tuesday area for the peninsula, we do have primarily northerly flow circulating around our low pressure system there, 25 to 30 knots. As you look way out east here, this is actually a good example of those winds. This average temperature or wind is taking into account the front as it was further to the south earlier in the morning hours, but as of 4 p.m. this single snapshot is showing those easterly winds a little bit further to the north, but the average throughout the day is more of an easterly direction around 30 knots east of Kodiak Island. Then on Wednesday, we can see northwesterly flow 20 to 30 knots, strongest as we get further to the west in the Alaska Peninsula area. Northerly flow through Shelikof Strait around 15 knots there. Taking us into the Aleutian Islands, we have northeasterly flow out west around 20 knots and northerly flow through the remainder 20 to 25 knots. Northwesterly flow 20 to 30 knots, strongest to the east on Wednesday, and then way out west 10 to 15 knot winds. Along the western coast of the state, northerly flow 15 to 30 knots, strongest around Nunavik Island with seas around 8 feet there. Then on Wednesday, continuing with the northerly flow, 20 to 30 knots, again strongest just to the south of Nunavik Island. Along the Arctic coastline, northerly flow 15 to 20 knots, getting up to as high as 25 knots as we get closer to the Bering Strait area. And then on Wednesday, continuing with north to northwest flow out here by the Beaufort Sea, 25 knots, and northerly flow along the west coast, 25 to 30 knots. Quick recap for the weather for the state. We have our low out here bringing rain to the central and western Aleutian Islands. We have some snow with the colder temperatures up to the north along the Arctic coastline. And then our main low pressure system coming in tonight, bringing in rain from the Bristol Bay area through the North Gulf Coast and south central areas and through the Yakutat area with some fog developing in the Panhandle area, as much of the rain will stay to the west of most of the Panhandle. With Alaska weather, I'm David Kramer. Thanks for being with us tonight.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.